I am a teacher at Columbine High School. There is a student here with a gun.
He's inside the school shooting at the gun!
Well, I had to do it because somebody had to do something.
After shooting in the theater, I didn't have a plan of whether to die or not.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be covering the 2023 Jacksonville Dollar General store shooting, which took place on August 26, 2023. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly remind you that you can gain access to special perks by joining our membership. To do so, please hit the join button below or follow the link in the description or pinned comment. Thank you. For some reason, information regarding some parts of this case was really hard to come by, but we did our best to gather as much as possible. This case is also pretty recent, which could be the reason for that, but we apologize if there are chunks missing. With that out of the way, let's jump right into the video. Today's shooter was a 21-year-old man named Ryan Christopher Palmeter. Born on November 28, 2001, in Orange Park, Florida, Ryan later moved to the Oakleaf Plantation area, which is just outside of Jacksonville. Here, he lived with his parents and brother named James, who was 5 years older than him. Little is reported about Ryan's upbringing, so during my research, I wasn't able to find much, but of course I will share everything I was able to dig up. Ryan seemed to be a shy but normal kid. One of his classmates from middle school later came out and described him as introverted and socially awkward. The two of them rode the bus together and sometimes played video games at Ryan's house. His former classmate also said he was very involved with internet humor. One of the family's neighbors recalled that Ryan's parents were the type of people who would drop anything they were doing to help anyone in need. He apparently never met Ryan personally, but later stated that he seemed like a good kid, as far as he could tell. In March of 2016, when Ryan was around 14 years old, the police were called to his home over a domestic dispute involving Ryan and his brother James. According to a few reports, Ryan was calling his older brother names, which led to James turning Ryan's computer off in the middle of him using it. This turned into a heated argument, and Ryan in turn kicked his brother in the groin, which started a larger fight. The cops were called when the situation failed to de-escalate, but no charges were filed, and no arrests were made. Outside of this run-in with law enforcement, Ryan, to my knowledge, had no other incidents involving police in his life. About a year later, on July 6, 2017, Ryan ran away after leaving a note at home, in which he threatened to commit suicide by jumping off the Bank of America building in downtown Jacksonville. In the note, he reportedly apologized to his parents and also gave his reasoning for wanting to end his life, stating something along the lines of being really stressed out and just not able to bear living any longer. Eventually, his dad found the letter, and Ryan's family immediately started looking for him. When found by his mother on the street, Ryan was transported to a mental health care facility and was placed under the Baker Act, which is a Florida law that enables families and loved ones to provide emergency mental health services and temporary detention for people who are impaired because of their mental illness and who are unable to determine their needs for treatment. As far as I gathered, this involuntary 72-hour stay at the mental health center did not prohibit Ryan from later purchasing firearms. The reason for this was reported to be because he was a minor, and that he was not actually committed to a mental institution. Moving on to his late teenage years, Ryan attended Flagler College in the fall of 2020, but later dropped out in the spring of 2021. It seems as though he was living away from home during his time there, but ultimately ended up living back at his parents' home after he left school. Ryan's father later recalled that Ryan held a job at Home Depot for a while, before he ultimately lost it. His father also claimed that Ryan was practically living in his room at that point. In April of 2023, a few years after leaving college, Ryan purchased his pistol, a Glock 20 10mm handgun. A few months later, in June, he also acquired his rifle, which was a Palmetto State Armory PA-15, an AR-15 style rifle. Both firearms were later used in his sickening attack. At some point prior to the shooting, Ryan began to write very disturbing things on various parts of his rifle, directly inspired by the Christchurch Mosque shooter, Brenton Tarrant's weapons. I'm going to share some of the writings from Ryan's rifle and magazines, which read, "This one is for Derek Chauvin. This one's for Seth Africa, Orania, Rhodesia. This one is for Ian Smith. At least you can f*** a dog and it won't choke you out. This one's for coal burners. White women deserve better. I'm gonna make you breathless. It's a long way to Mukumbura, all right." Some of the writings on the rifle itself read, "Kill 'em all. I am trash man. Fuck optics. This machine kills sicker than your average killer. This city needs a hero. Kill, kill, kill. Ready to die, but I never will." And I believe this one says, "This killing sponsored by Idiocracy." I could be wrong on that one, so please let me know what you think it says. Along with all of these edgy writings, Ryan also drew swastikas in some of the free space on the gun. As we will get deeper into later in the video, Ryan began constructing an absolutely disgusting and hate-filled manifesto at some point. That's about all there is that was reported about his life prior to the shooting. So let's move on to the actual attack, which took place on August 26, 2023. I will now be referring to Ryan by his last name, Palmeter. At approximately 11:40 a.m., Palmeter loaded his vehicle with various equipment that he would need later that day. He also stashed his rifle and Glock inside, before departing from his home in Oakleaf Plantation, Florida, and beginning his drive towards Jacksonville. About 40 minutes later, at 12:23 p.m., Palmeter was seen on security cameras pulling into the parking lot of his likely initial target, a Family Dollar store. Ryan sat in his vehicle for about a minute, before exiting and examining his own reflection in his car's window. He then made his way toward the front of the store. He appears to be wearing a mask and sunglasses at this time. As he opened the door to the store, he held it for a father and son who were just leaving, then continued to hold it open for two other customers coming in behind him. These people had no clue what this seemingly kind man's intentions were for being in this store. He was not there to shop, but rather likely to case the place for his unimaginable plan of pure evil. At just about 12:30, Palmeter was seen exiting the store after reportedly making a purchase of some sort, holding the door open again for entering customers. He made his way to his vehicle and hopped in the driver's seat. About 30 seconds later, a security patrol car made its way into view and pulled into the parking lot of the dollar store. At the same time, Palmeter exited his vehicle and made his way to the trunk, where he had previously stored a load-bearing ammunition vest and a bulletproof vest, along with the rest of his equipment. Right when he reached the back of his car, the security guard drove past him, and it looked to me like Palmeter looked straight at the decal on the side of the vehicle. He then opened the trunk of his car and rummaged around briefly. Possibly because of the security presence at the Family Dollar, Palmeter chose to close the back and return to the driver's seat of the car. He sat there for 6 minutes, possibly waiting to see if the security guard would leave. Eventually, Palmeter abandoned his potential plan to attack this location, and at 12:40, he drove out of the parking lot. The clueless security officer departed from this location soon after as well, unaware that him being there at that moment may have saved many lives inside the store. I just wanted to point out that the timestamps on this video in particular are a little wonky, so I went off of reports for the timing at this point. At 12:48 p.m., just 8 minutes after departing from the Family Dollar store, Palmeter arrived at the nearby Edward Waters University, which is a historically black private Christian school located in Jacksonville, Florida. Once there, he pulled into the parking lot located behind the campus library. Some time passed before Palmeter decided to step out of his vehicle and head to the trunk once again. A minute or so later, two men approached the red car parked next to Palmeter. He quickly closed the hatch of his vehicle and took off his overshirt. During this point in time, Palmeter began seemingly aimlessly searching inside the vehicle before heading back to the trunk, simultaneously glancing over to the red car. Not too long after this point, the red car pulled out of their parking space and drove away from the area. After they left, and now not at risk of someone seeing him, Palmeter resumed his plan. As you can tell from the footage, he had already put on a pair of blue latex gloves before yet again heading to the back of his car. He once again opened the trunk, but this time, he can be seen equipping himself with the bulletproof vest, fastening the straps on the side. After doing so, he pulled his overshirt back on. As it turns out, Palmeter, who was still in the middle of putting it on, was not as in the clear as he had thought. Unbeknownst to Palmeter, a dark red vehicle pulled in behind him, the occupants catching a brief glimpse of the bulletproof vest he had on before he could conceal it under his blue shirt. At some point, two guards in a university security vehicle, including Lieutenant Antonio Bailey, pulled into the parking lot behind the EWU library. Reportedly, they had been contacted by concerned students after they watched him put on the vest. It was at the same time that Palmeter got back into the driver's seat of his car. Antonio later recalled noticing the way that Palmeter was dressed and thinking, quote, "What are you doing here? Something's wrong." It was during this time that one of the occupants of the dark red car recorded a small clip on their phone, later posting it on their social media.
Commit.
Oh, no, he might do some shit, though.
Oh, yeah, he locking that door. He got that bulletproof vest. And BSO is on the way. Yeah. Suspicious.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Grab him.
Grab him. Oh, they finna get his ass. I know they finna get his ass.
It's amazing that they were so observant and thought to document what was going on. The dark red vehicle proceeded to pull alongside the security car, and the occupants of both cars began to talk to one another. It wasn't long after this that the security vehicle's doors opened and the guards began to step out. Right when their doors opened, Palmeter began backing out of his parking spot. Before the guards could make contact with him, he fled the scene between 5 and 10 minutes after arriving. Some sources state it was 12:56, and some state it was a few minutes later. While some theorize that Palmeter was only using this location to change, a lot of people think that he was going to target the university, since it was historically black. As we already know from the quotes on his rifle, and as I will share with you more, Palmeter had an incredibly negative view on black people. So him choosing this location for his attack is certainly plausible. Thankfully, the presence of the security guards was enough to make Palmeter leave the campus, potentially saving numerous lives. Many credit his departure to Lieutenant Antonio Bailey, but he later stated, "I'm no hero. If anything, it's the students who alerted me so I could do my job." Anyway, back to the time when he took off. According to the guards, Palmeter fled pretty quickly, jumping a curb and almost crashing into a brick column in the process, which alarmed them immediately. The two guards then quickly got back in. The security and civilian vehicles both followed Palmeter down the road, obtaining his license plate during the pursuit. Palmeter made a turn down a street, and the dark red car immediately followed him. The security vehicle was initially slowed due to being in the wrong lane, but they also made the turn to follow Palmeter. Unfortunately, they either lost sight of him or were otherwise unable to follow him. I read that as security officers on the campus, they were only allowed to tail a suspicious person up until a certain point. Palmeter's strange actions, including his evading maneuvers, obviously stuck out to the security guards, who, less than 10 minutes after his departure from the lot, flagged down an officer from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and reported the suspicious behavior, also giving the officer Palmeter's license plate number. The officer immediately began drafting a BOLO, or be on the lookout, for other officers in the area to keep an eye out for the suspicious driver. Unfortunately, the bolo did not go out until Palmeter's attack had already begun. Shortly before the alert was sent to other officers, Palmeter pulled his vehicle into the parking lot of a Dollar General, located 4 minutes away from the university. He parked his car near the store, but no cameras captured his exact movements during this time, or if they did, I was unable to find the footage. I'm also unsure how long he sat in his car before exiting and putting his impromptu plan into motion, but it must have been very quick. At some point, Palmeter got out and equipped himself with his camouflage ammo vest, a face mask, a hat, and a pair of ear protectors. He then armed himself with both of his firearms, the Glock handgun and the AR-15 style rifle. Directly in front of the entrance to the store, and in the way of Palmeter's destructive path, was a 52-year-old woman who would sadly become the first victim of the tragic attack. Her name was Angela Carr, and she was just sitting in the driver's seat of her vehicle. Angela was an Uber driver who was reportedly only there to drop off a rider at the Dollar General. It is very possible that she was in the middle of accepting another ride when Palmeter approached the front of her car. Other versions of the story claimed she had just gotten off the phone with a family member. Palmeter, now in view of the store's security cameras, was seen raising his rifle, taking aim at the unsuspecting Angela. At 1:08 p.m., he proceeded to fire 11 rounds into the car, killing Angela in the process. According to multiple sources, the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office had shot spotter systems set up, which detected the 11 gunshots and subsequently alerted the authorities. After taking the life of his first victim, Palmeter turned and entered the store, where he was seen on surveillance video making his way inside and immediately taking aim at 19-year-old Anault Laguerre, who was just off camera. Another employee at the store, who wanted to remain anonymous during a later interview, stated that she was working the cash register right before the incident. She stated that she had actually just left 19-year-old Anault to work the register while she went to the back office. Anault, who also went by AJ, was an employee at the store and was working to help his grandmother pay bills after he graduated from high school. Sadly, it would be at his job that AJ would lose his life. The unnamed employee later stated that she watched the entire shooting take place on security cameras from the office. Meanwhile, there were multiple customers and other employees inside the store when the shots first went off, and many of them had no clue what was happening. It didn't take long, though, to realize that they were in immense danger and that they needed to get out of there as fast as they could. One of the customers in the store, Mercedes Jones, a young black mother who was with her 2-year-old daughter at the time, was busy shopping for art supplies when Palmeter came in and fired his rifle. It took a second for the severity of the situation to set in for her as well, but she then quickly reacted to the unknown danger. Mercedes stated, "I didn't know the nature of the crime at the time. All I knew was, I got to get my baby out of here." She also later said, "I didn't care if he shot me, just not my baby." Employees and customers, including Mercedes and her daughter, frantically ran to the emergency exit located on the east side of the building, with Palmeter trailing them close behind. According to reports, after exiting the building, the group all found themselves stuck on the side of the store due to a large fence blocking their escape. From Google Street View, it seems like there was an open area to run. However, the survivors claimed they were blocked. I'm unsure what exactly prohibited them from running, so just keep that in mind. It's reported that at least one of them, an unidentified man, had actually managed to scale the fence, escaping to safety. The rest of the group were not so lucky, as most of them were said to be older women, so there was really no way for them to climb the fence. Mercedes Jones was in the same boat, as she was with her young daughter at the time, making it difficult for her to be able to scale the fence. According to Mercedes, Palmeter emerged from the exit door and confronted the now terrified and trapped group. She recalled this time saying, "He was like in military clothes. He had like this Marine outfit on, a bulletproof vest, and the biggest gun I have ever seen strapped around his shoulders. and he just sat there. He watched us. He could have killed us all. She remembered shielding her daughter behind her while she and the others pleaded the attacker for their lives. Mercedes said, "Everyone else jumped, but I couldn't. I had a baby. So, therefore, we were begging for our lives. I fell begging for mine, blocking my baby with my body." She recalled hearing Palmeter tell the group, "If you don't want me to shoot you, run." So the group did just that and took off, desperately running for their lives. Thankfully, they were all able to make it away from the scene with no injuries, other than Mercedes, who fell and scraped her knees. I find it very interesting that Palmeter let Mercedes and her daughter live, despite him expressing his hatred for black people several times throughout his manifesto, which again, we will get into later. The 3 older women he spared were all said to be white, so letting them live makes more sense according to his views. But please, do let me know down in the comments why you think he spared the young mother and her daughter. At 1:09 p.m., less than a minute after the attack began, Palmeter reportedly fired a single round outside of the store, this one also being picked up by the ShotSpotter alert system. Right after taking this shot, Palmeter re-entered the store. I couldn't find any source that stated exactly what Palmeter was firing at, but I still wanted to quickly mention this. It was also at this same time that the first 911 call was placed, to alert authorities to the rampage taking place in the Dollar General. Palmeter, now back inside the shop, fired at a security camera multiple times, attempting to disable it, but missed each shot. At 1:10 p.m., during a break in the gunfire, a man, 29-year-old Gerald Gallion, and his girlfriend Elvisha, entered the store, unfortunately not hearing the previous gunshots, or noticing Angela's car right outside of the front doors with bullet holes in the windshield. Unbeknownst to them, they had both just stumbled into a deranged man's kill zone. Shortly after they entered the building, Palmeter spotted the pair and quickly fired at them. Sadly, Gerald Gallion was struck and killed by Palmeter. His girlfriend Elvisha had actually witnessed the moment he fell, just after being shot. Soon afterwards, she took off running further into the store, with Palmeter chasing and simultaneously firing at her. Elvisha eventually exited the store through the back doors. Palmeter reportedly fired out the door at her, but fortunately she was never hit by any of his bullets. Again, these shots were picked up on the ShotSpotter, it being about 1:13 p.m. at the time. Now, since the timeline is not exactly clear, I believe this was the moment where the unnamed employee, who was still inside the back office, made their escape through the front door. Luckily for them, Palmeter was preoccupied on the side of the building. Anyway, just a minute after he fired at Elvisha out the back door, he made his way back inside and toward the office, where the employee had just been sheltering. It's reported that at 1:14 p.m., Palmeter entered the office, most likely already aware he would not leave the room alive. Palmeter's actions for the next 4 minutes are unknown, as most of the surveillance footage has not been released at this time. All reports suggest that Palmeter did not exit the office again once he entered, so I personally believe that Palmeter had spent the 4 minutes in the office, taking off his mask, ear protection, gloves, and vest, evident by crime scene photos. At 1:18, Palmeter got his phone out and sent a text to his father. The text instructed his father to use a screwdriver to gain access to his locked bedroom at their house. After all, Palmeter had left some things inside his room for his dad to find. Following the text, his father tried to and was eventually able to get the bedroom door open, the exact time being unclear. Either way, inside, he would discover his son's last will and testament, a suicide note, and 3 manifestos, one for his parents, the media, and federal agents. Also in the room was a full bottle of Palmeter's psychiatric medication, suggesting he hadn't been taking it for some time at this point. Now I know that I never mentioned him taking any medication, and that is because I was unable to find any definitive answer as to when he began doing so. I think it's safe to assume he started taking it after being put under the Baker Act, but like I said, it's unclear. The important thing to know is that he was supposed to be taking it, but had seemingly stopped in the time before the attack. It wouldn't be until 1:53 p.m. that his father would alert authorities of the shocking discoveries he made in his son's room. Let's back up to 1:19 p.m., when police finally entered the Dollar General, determined to stop the threat. It's likely that Palmeter watched on the security cameras as the several officers entered through the emergency exit and began closing in on him. Officers can be seen on the footage making their way through the store, cautiously clearing aisles. Eventually, the footage appears to show an officer attempting to open a locked door, to no avail. Please keep in mind, it's not 100% clear if this was the door to the room Palmeter was in or not, but after the officer attempted to open the door, a single gunshot rang out, sending the responding officers scrambling to cover. This was the moment Palmeter pulled out his Glock 10mm handgun and ended his own life with a single shot at 1:19 p.m. It was a little over 2 hours later that SWAT officers confirmed that Palmeter was deceased and that the threat was no longer active. Shortly following the devastating shooting, Sheriff Waters from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office held a press conference to discuss the details of the case. He disclosed as much information as he could at the time, including the names of the victims, and also some details about the shooter's views straight from his writings that we will go over in a minute. Sheriff Waters said, "The manifesto is the diary of a madman. He was completely irrational, but he knew what he was doing. He was 100% lucid. It's disappointing that anyone would go to these lengths to hurt someone else." He also spoke about the gunman's actions on that day, mainly about when he stopped by the university before going to the dollar store. "It looks to me that he went there to change into whatever he needed to change into. He had the opportunity to do violence at EWU. He did not. There were people very close, in very close proximity. He did not do anything there. He backed out, and he left." The sheriff played a brief clip from the security footage showing the man he identified as Palmeter shooting at Angela's black Kia 11 times outside of the store, before storming through the front sliding glass doors and shooting victims at random. In December of 2023, just months after the shooting, family members of the victims filed a wrongful death lawsuit against both Dollar General and Ryan Palmeter's parents, alleging that more could have been done to prevent the attack. According to some articles, one of the attorneys representing the families said that by not having a dedicated security guard for the store, which was in what was described as a high-crime area, the company was putting profits over people. Knowing that Palmeter stopped at and quickly departed 2 other locations once security was on the premises, it does seem likely that Palmeter would have rethought his plans and moved on to a different location, sparing the lives of the 3 innocent people killed that day. Of course, he would have most likely just committed his attack elsewhere and ended the lives of other people instead. Either way, the lawsuit stated, "While Palmeter was deterred from harming the public at his 2 preceding stops, at this Dollar General, there was nothing in place to again deter Palmeter from attacking and killing innocent persons." Of course, we will never know what the true outcome would have been, so it remains as speculation. The lawsuit also accused Palmeter's parents of having prior knowledge of the danger that their son posed and doing nothing about it. One source reporting on this said that they knew he was a dangerous person with an obsession regarding firearms and violence, living in a room filled with prescription medication and alcohol, as well as firearms. Apparently, Palmeter had prescription drug bottles lining the surfaces in his room, along with several different books on guns, all of which were in plain view. Another attorney representing the families said, "Parents need to know that if you're letting a serial killer live and breathe and drink and do drugs, and just let them go unfettered in your own home, you're going to be held responsible too." As far as I could tell, the lawsuits haven't come to a conclusion quite yet, as I wasn't able to find any reports on the outcome. With that, let's finally move on to the document that displays all of Palmeter's sickening views. In January of 2024, one of the writings that Palmeter left behind was finally released, and it was called A white boy summer to remember. This is the manifesto that I have been referring to throughout the video. This particular writing is filled to the absolute brim with some of the most racist, homophobic, disgusting, and hateful things a person could come up with. I'm going to include a few passages to give you an idea, but the document itself is 27 pages long, so I'm not going to include most of it. I just want to let you know that there will be a lot of bleeps during this section, of which all but the second one are the N-word. The second line he wrote reads, "I killed a bunch of and that's a good thing." After then quoting a song, he wrote, "TND, total death. Nomenclature as recent as the idea's popularity." While some fringe historical movements understood the as a wild beast in need of culling, it is only in very recent times that the white man has realized his differences with the irreconcilable. And a sizable portion, more sizable than lovers care to admit, has decided that the must go. Each race of human forced to cohabitate with the sees the horrors it wreaks upon their countries. It continues. Despite this, no meaningful action has been taken. The fear is that a lack of de jure organization among proponents of total death will lead to fruitless lone wolf attacks. Doubtlessly, my actions will be decried as such. However, one can only be a lone wolf if no other wolves follow behind them. To all who see the clear and present havoc let loose upon Western society and values, consider this your call to arms. As Paul Revere rode alone to deliver his warning that the British were coming, I fight alone to deliver this warning. The is already here, and if you are to live free of its savagery, then you must take up arms and put the down like the animal it is. And finally, he wrote, "If you are in doubt, simply look at me. If somebody like myself can take down as many as I do, while out of shape, and with no knowledge of culling herds, relying solely on the hope of inspiring a better tomorrow, imagine what somebody who is physically fit and versed in combat could do. Imagine what many could do. Imagine what an entire nation of killers could do. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I have taken that first step. I urge those reading to take the rest." Palmeter also did us the favor of providing a Q&A section about halfway through his manifesto. I'll share a few of the entries with you. One question was, "Do you think being undecided is a bad thing?" Palmeter answered this by saying, "Not at all. A smart man takes time to make decisions, looking over all of the evidence available to him. I can only recommend that you set emotions aside and consider your interactions with If you interact with regularly, the conclusion you will come to, if decided rationally, will be similar to mine. If you do not interact with regularly, try to keep it that way and consider yourself lucky." Another question was, "Why drive so far? Couldn't you have just put down the infesting Jacksonville?" And the answer to this was, "Are you crazy? Any asshole could be a good guy with a gun, and I would have no idea. Constitutional carry is great for the law-abiding but scary for the criminal. My actions are just, but they are not yet accepted. Taking the time to drive to a state with stricter gun laws lowers the chance of the white people I ignore shooting me in the back." Now, I wasn't able to figure out what state he was talking about going to, but from this, we can obviously assume that he initially planned on committing his attack in a state other than Florida. Some of the last things Palmeter wrote consisted of, "To the few smart enough to read, I tell you this. Your time is coming, and soon. I have killed many of you, and if I see you in hell, I will do so again. The white man is coming for you. Take up arms. Kill us in the streets as we will do to you, if you can. Your days of holding this nation hostage are at an end. We will not stand for your animalistic behavior any longer. This is your last chance to sober up, act civilized, run away to your shithole jungles, or die like the dogs you are. I will not be taken alive. My actions are necessary, and yet I will be vilified. I will never see the fruits of my labor, but knowing this fruit may indeed bear is reward enough. Stand behind me, follow my actions, do as I have done, and we as a society may just yet know peace once again. And above everything else, make this a white boy summer to remember. What I shared with you guys is just a portion of his total writing. Having to read through all of it was very sickening to say the least, so let's move on. A small memorial site was set up outside of the Dollar General. There was a photo for each victim, all of which were plastered with flowers, notes, and small gifts. 1 year after the tragic attack, a soil collection ceremony was held in memory of the 3 innocent victims. One site states that it is a tradition started by the Equal Justice Initiative to remember victims of racial violence. According to sources, over 300 people partook in order to show their support. An official plaque was also constructed and installed at Kings Road Memorial Park to remember the victims. Now, let's take a moment to talk about the people who unfairly had their life taken away from them. Angela Michelle Carr was born on April 28, 1971, and was 52 years old at the time of her death. I unfortunately wasn't able to find much about her, but I did read that she was an amazing mother who loved her 3 kids, Ashley, Chavon, and Armisha, very dearly. She also reportedly had 16 grandchildren, which I'm sure she adored as well. Her daughter Ashley later said about her, "She was great. She was that Chaka Khan song, I'm Every Woman. She was the mother, the father, the provider, the counselor, the pastor. She was everything." Her other daughter, Armisha, later spoke about how great of a person her mother was, saying that she taught her to love everyone, no matter their skin color, race, religion, creed, or anything. Her son, Chavon, later spoke about his mother, saying, "She was a hard-working woman. I watched her do everything as a child. We talked every day no matter what. Mad, sad, happy. It didn't matter." Part of Angela's obituary reads, "Angela always had a lightness to her spirit and a smile that could brighten even the darkest of days. She had a contagious laughter that reverberated in the hearts of those fortunate enough to be in her presence. Whether it was dancing to her favorite tunes, splurging on a shopping spree, or exploring new recipes in the kitchen, Angela knew how to embrace every moment of life. Her zest for adventure was infectious, and she encouraged all those around her to seize the day." 19-year-old Anolt Joseph Laguerre, who also went by AJ, was born on October 25, 2004. He had recently graduated high school and was reportedly excited to move on to college, planning to study cybersecurity. Along with working at the Dollar General, Anolt was pursuing his dream of becoming a professional streamer on the side, something that he was very passionate about in the time before his death. When he was just 5 years old, his mother passed away and was then taken care of by his grandmother, along with his 4 siblings. He also lived with his grandmother's 2 kids, who were also like siblings to him. Part of his obituary reads, "Despite this immense loss at such a young age, AJ remained positive and strong for all of us, supporting us through the challenging times that followed our mother's passing." Along with supporting himself while planning for his future, I read that Anolt worked at the Dollar General in order to help his grandmother out financially. His loved ones described him as a kind-hearted and gentle soul who loved to spend time with his friends and family. One of his brothers said, "He would give you the clothes off his back and the food off his plate." Anolt seemed like such a great kid who would have gone on to have a prosperous future. He was just beginning his life when it was tragically cut short. He had so many goals and dreams that he unfortunately never got a chance to accomplish. I will put the link to the GoFundMe started by his family in the description of the video. Gerald Deshawn Gallion was 29 years old, born on July 16, 1994. According to his obituary, Gerald loved music and often spent his free time at a studio creating mixtapes. During my search for information regarding him, it was immediately apparent that Gerald was a devoted father who absolutely adored his 4-year-old daughter. In fact, he was getting ready to spend the weekend with her like he always did, but unfortunately, he never got the chance to. The last time he spoke with his daughter was the night before, on the phone, when she was having trouble getting to sleep. Despite not being with his daughter's mother, Taisha, anymore, she said that Gerald was an amazing father and that they still got along very well. In fact, that was the case with her whole family as well. She also spoke more about what type of father he was. He was my daughter's best friend. He got her every weekend. He was the best daddy ever. Taisha's mother also spoke about how much of a great father Gerald was, saying, "He never missed a beat. He got her every weekend." As a matter of fact, he was supposed to have her Saturday. Sickeningly, Gerald was ripped away from ever being able to see his beloved daughter again, and she is now forced to grow up without her best friend. I can't imagine how the family told his young daughter that he would no longer be able to come around. Seeing all of the photos he took with her was both very sweet and equally heartbreaking. Please take a moment to remember the precious lives lost in this completely unnecessary act of violence. I hope that their souls are able to rest peacefully and that their families are able to heal from such a traumatic event. Thank you to all of you who stuck around to the end of the video. We hope you learned something new about the case and that you'll be back for the next one. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure to hit the bell notification as well. We want to give a big thank you to our members for going the extra mile to support the channel further. We very much appreciate every single one of you. We will see you guys next time, but until then, please remember to stay safe and be kind to those around you.